Hello and welcome back to the Pain Free for Life podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Rob Vanbergen, and today I'm joined by Reed Davis. Reed is a double board certified holistic health practitioner, a certified nutritional therapist, best-selling author, and popular expert in functional lab testing and holistic lifestyle medicine. He's also an environmental paralegal and conservationist, and Reed is the founder of the Functional Diagnostic Nutrition certification course, with over 4,000 graduates in 50 countries. He was the health director and case manager at a wellness center in Southern California for over 10 years, where he reviewed thousands of labs with thousands of clients and made important discoveries that are now part of the FDM methodology. Reed serves on the board of the American Association of Natural Wellness Coaches and lives in the US. When not teaching and helping his graduates build their practices, he can be found landscaping his property or riding motorcycles. In today's episode, Reed and I discuss functional diagnostic nutrition, the power of lab work, the role of the gut, and the cascade of stresses that go throughout our body. We also talk about the gut-brain connection and how to decode symptoms in order to discover true healing opportunity.
Welcome back to Pain Free for Life, where we share how to successfully overcome all kinds of chronic and extreme conditions to live happy, productive, pain-free lives forever. And now, here's your host, co-founder, and board-certified holistic healthcare practitioner, Dr. Rob Vanbergen.
All right, Reed, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me here, Dr. Rob.
All right, so you have very interesting company name here, Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. So can you start by telling our audience a little bit about what this is? Because you can kind of suss it out there, kind of who you are, how functional lab screenings impact health, and the journey that clients will take as they're working towards healing.
Yeah, thanks so much. The name actually, Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, I couldn't think of anything longer, so I just went with that. No, seriously, it's the name I gave my first weekend workshop. After I'd been doing it for 10 years, I'd never called it anything. If I could just go back a little bit, I was in environmental law and conservation, saving the planet, air, birds, water, trees, bees. And I decided to start working with people. Just like, hey, it's not good for these creatures. So what about us, including me? You know, I had good health, thank God, but I didn't want anything sneaking up on me. So I just changed gears to work with people, and I had a lot to learn. I had nothing to unlearn because I hadn't been trained very much. But I went to work in a wellness center. I ran thousands of labs on thousands of people. I had great mentorship as I helped the patients and clients coming in there. I did some remarkable work over 10 years. Again, making some discoveries. But when it came time to teach, which I was kind of urged into, I had to come up with a name for that weekend workshop. And function is very functional. It's about how we're functioning on all levels, all systems, all cells, and what have you. It's diagnostic in nature. It's not medical diagnosis, but because we use laboratory work and lots of data, it's very diagnostic, I guess, in nature. And then, of course, it's nutrition, really, because I was a nutritionist, but I like to think of it more of nurturing and just nurturing everything there is to nurture. And so functional diagnostic nutrition, and it sold real well. And I did some more classes, and now I'm just kind of stuck with it.
So when it comes to functional lab testing, I mean, people are used to the kind of two different spectrums, right? On the one hand, you go to your doctor, your MD, and he does basic blood work that doesn't normally cover everything. And that's kind of the limitations there. On the other hand, people are often used to alternative medicine having very limited lab capabilities and diagnostic capabilities. So this sounds like it kind of bridges the gap. What sort of things do you have tests for?
Well, we test hormones, the immune system, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system imbalances. And that actually is an acronym that spells hidden. And that's why it was so easy for me to rattle off, because in that 10-year period, running thousands of labs for thousands of people, that's the pattern I recognize that, uh, again, and you're right, they've been to a physician in most cases, or two or five or 10 practitioners of some sort, and hadn't really got to the bottom of things. And so my motto was, I'm going to be the last guy you need to see, because we're going to sort this out. And thank goodness for the labs that were available and under development at the time. Nowadays, I mean, because I'm talking 25 years ago, nowadays we have even more, exotic and esoteric, lots of labs. Some of them I don't think much of, but I came up with that HIDDEN, hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system. That is a whole constellation. You can identify a whole constellation of healing opportunities. And these are not medical diagnoses, they're healing opportunities. They're really what's wrong. And the next question is always, well, how do I fix it? So you had people then, and you have people now getting standard blood work, being told, well, there's nothing really wrong with you here yet. And I say, yet. So it's the yet that bothers me. And so I wanted to find out, well, okay, so you've been sort of tossed out of the doctor's office, but you still have a lot of complaints. What's really wrong? And that's where these other tests came in, the alternative labs. We call them sometimes functional lab testing.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the problem, right? Standard blood work, it often doesn't show stuff until it's too late. It's kind of that, what are you going to do here, right?
Or too early.
Or too early, and there's nothing, nothing really showing what's going on. So as you're saying, I know we have a big issue. We can't use the word diagnostic. This is not a medical diagnostic, as you said. It's revealing opportunities. So now, I mean, you've got functional diagnostic nutrition. So is your whole thing about identifying holes in people through the labs and then fixing it nutritionally? Is that kind of the way it goes? Is it all about the guts?
Well, the gut certainly is part of it. They say everything begins in the gut, and I don't believe that. Matter of fact, I know it's not true, but it certainly circles around to the gut often enough that we land there at some point. But it begins with stress, just various stressors. I use that in a very broad term, whether it's mental, emotional stress, we all know what that is, and physical stress, the aches and pains left over from injuries. Myself, I did sports and lots of crazy things and hurt myself. I have that kind of stress. And then, of course, there's the chemical and biochemical stressors of the environment, which is where I started the whole deal. So, stress breaks the body down, and it can land quite quickly in the gut with, dysbiosis and worse, leaky gut, all the things that happen there, which manifest, that's where the complaints are. But I can show you upstream, using all the lab work, how to go upstream, sort it out, and fix everything at once, because it works better.
Right. Instead of just kind of hitting symptoms as they come up and trying to knock those down, you're looking for where it all started, really.
Yeah. And again, that's where the constellation of healing opportunities come in. And you'll understand this, and I think it's pretty interesting, that these causal factors that we identify all over the place, well, they're also having an effect on each other in ways that aren't singly measurable. So where's that? And then a recent study from a University of California, San Diego, where I live in San Diego, researcher there said that the original stressor doesn't even have to be present anymore, but the downward spiral that it created. So you're looking for this so-called root cause. Hey, you could be looking for a long time because there's never one. They're having an effect on each other that you can't measure. And sometimes it may not even exist anymore. So I gave up using that term root cause for what I think is better, and that's metabolic chaos. There's just metabolic chaos. And to sort it out, you need to have this system of identifying multiple causal factors and then having an effect on all of them at once.
Right. So it's creating so many this one thing that happened at the beginning ends up creating so many changes. It's kind of like an avalanche, right? It cascades and everything gets affected by it.
You used the perfect term, cascade, and it's quite a cascade. It is. Metabolism is really the sum total of everything, all the activities in your body, but they come in two main categories. There's catabolism, which breaks things down, and anabolism, not cannibalism, anabolism, and that builds things up. So you have the body breaking down, the body building up, and in that milieu, there is quite a lot of opportunities for dysfunction.
So I'm just going to roll back a little bit here. Hidden, HIDDEN. Is it done in order of what you tend to, in any particular order? Like, do you tend to find hormones are the first thing to check, that they're the first thing that can fall out of place? Or is there any...
The preference? And well, see, that's the thing, Dr. Rob. The system that we call FDN, functional, is really to run all the labs at once. We run 5 labs: blood, saliva, urine, stool. And we get the job done because we don't know which one of the things we're going to find is, dominant. And matter of fact, that it's being affected by the other things. The hormones are out of balance, catabolic, anabolic. Well, that throws the sex hormones off. Then that, together can throw the immune system off. Secretory IgA, one of your main defenders, goes down. Well, next thing you know, you've got a dysbiosis and worse. So now you've got all these complaints. And if you just treated the symptoms, you might feel a little bit better for a little while, but they're going to come back. And as a matter of fact, that cascade you mentioned, we call it the metabolic chaos cascade. Used to call it the stress cascade, but it continues to downward spiral. And so we want to have some other observations. Well, how's your digestion working? Are you actually breaking down and assimilating all that great food you're spending all that money on? We hope. All right, how's your detoxification systems working? You got the liver and the kidneys and the lymph and the lungs and the skin and the colon and so on. So you got hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, and the other things that we mentioned. And if you don't work on them all at once, you have less, I'll say it just doesn't work out as well. It works out so much better when you bring all of the healing principles to bear on every cell, every tissue, every organ, the entire organism, in a sense. And so we do that through we have a DRESS. Our protocols are also pretty well defined and categorized as diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. And there's no big surprises there either. It's just that you're doing them together all at once, and they're guided by the lab work. We know what the healing opportunity, we know what to look for. We know where the finger's pointing. And, anything other than that would be practicing medicine, which we don't choose to do.
Right.
I'm not a medical doctor. I don't want to diagnose and treat anything specifically. I want to treat everything non-specifically. And by the way, we put the patient or our clients in the driver's seat. They're the ones who need to be in control of their own health.
Right. I think that's the way to go. I'm going to make a comment that, society as a whole has trended towards relying on someone else to take care of ourselves. And we really need to be the ones, like, we're number one. We're what chooses to input and chooses lifestyle changes. If we can't handle it, like, no one else is going to be able to do it for us. So it sounds like you're guiding people towards that kind of direction of, you are going to be your healer. You are going to make these changes for yourself.
Well, yes, it works better that way.
Yeah.
And it takes a responsible person, response-able person. If they just really just want you to hand them a drug or something and go on about their oblivious way, then they're really not a good client for us.
Right.
And that comes from, if I could explain just real quickly, when I first started in the clinic, I didn't know much. Like I said, I had a lot to learn, nothing to unlearn. It was sort of, I had a lot of research skills from my environmental law days, and I was able to transfer those skills over to finding out root causes, do the research with each person. So everybody became a study of one. And the people would come in and they'd have been to 6 people or 8 people or whatever, spent a lot of money. And the first thing I thought was, well, if you aren't better yet, that's kind of a ripoff. But the other thing is, well, why are you putting your health in these other people's hands? I've been kind of a self-taught and been on my own since I was a kid and things like that. So I always felt very responsible for my own situation, health, whatever it was. I could figure it out and live fine. I was doing well for myself in that profession, but man, I really wanted to help people, and I got this amazing opportunity that I think is pretty rare, and went to work. So again, putting the power back in the people's hands was my job. I didn't want them dependent on me. I'm no guru,
Right.
and now I've taught over 4,000 practitioners how to do what I learned in those 10 years in the office, and it's quite remarkable.
Yeah, it sounds like it is. Yeah, for sure. I mean, out of all these tests, I know that they're all interconnected. So I'm not saying that you don't want to do all of them, but is there any one thing that tends to stand out as like the biggest problem for general people? Maybe it's
Yeah,
a hint as to what people might need to look at first, I guess.
yeah. I'm trying not to get too trapped in that question, but I'll tell you, if I could only run 1 or 2 tests, I want to know how catabolic, how badly is my body breaking down, generally speaking. Or you might look at it as how much gas is left in the tank.
Right.
We do the adrenal stress profile, but we throw a couple extra markers in there that aren't on the regular stress and hormone profiles. So we look at insulin, and we look at uric acid, and we look at melatonin and other. So we're looking at this constellation of healing opportunities, including the sex hormones. And that's a great place to start, because I don't know a person that doesn't have stress in this world. You'd have to be living under a rock, and no one does. So, and if you do, you're probably not a good client for us. People come to us because they have a health problem that they want to solve or resolve. So then after that, believe it or not, it would be the food sensitivity testing. I've hit gold, hit home run after home run with that really good, we call it the mediator release test. It's a very sophisticated test for the body's bad reaction, because it's called mediator release from the white blood cells we collect blood, we look at that, we say, hey, these foods that you're eating poison to your body. Your body hates this stuff. Again, you can't talk about the cascade. I've had people with migraine headaches and really bad skin conditions and aches and pains all over their body, and kids with ADD and ADHD and just asthma, and you name it. And the trigger was foods. So I really hate doing that, but being sort of pinned down.
Yeah.
But yeah, if my funds were really limited, I had a lady once with just about no money, and I'd helped a friend of hers, and she kind of pleaded with me to, so I just sent her a food sensitivity test kit. She got it done. She went and got a blood draw, and I gave her the results and went over some recommendations. And her migraines, which she'd been 5 days a week, was in the dark room with a pillow over her head.
Oh no.
Those kind of, and within 2 weeks, she was calling me up going, oh my God, I can't believe it. I've only had normal headaches. You're laughing like, there's no such thing as a normal headache,
No.
but that was for her. That was an improvement. She says, I've only had a couple, and they go away with some aspirin. Well, that was, in her eyes, quite the miracle. And the story goes on, but that's the kind of example. I had a principal call me once, Dr. Rob, and of a school. This little boy, his mom was in our office getting some treatment and things. And she asked if I work with kids. I said, I'll try to help if I can. And anyway, after we got this boy on a different diet and lifestyle and some other things, the principal of the school actually tracked me down and said, this is a different kid. He's paying attention. He's not poking the other kids. His behavior has improved. What did you put him on?
Nah.
And you get the irony in that, because what we put him on was a really good diet and better lifestyle and bedtime and, some habits and things. and he just wanted to know if there was a magic pill.
Yeah. Give it to all the
That's
kids.
So I can go on. I have story after story after story, example of just little changes sometimes can have huge results.
Perfect. And that's why I wanted to ask that question. It was to be kind of like, what is the most common issue for people? I had a feeling it was going to be, well, I mean, stress obviously is huge, but I did have a feeling it was going to be what people are putting into their bodies. So much of the stuff we put into our bodies, I think our bodies don't like, and we don't know that they don't like them. So we get that really kind of subtle, maybe it makes us feel a little off, but it's that, as you said, it's that cascade, that little thing that might not bother you sometimes if you're having all these other problems is all gonna come crashing down, right? And
Yeah,
probably eating away at you underneath, and eventually will become a chronic problem.
it can be. And here's the reason why. Sometimes the body plays little tricks on us. So there can be certain foods or other elements in the environment that you consume in some way. The brain actually will produce endorphins specific to that antigen that make you feel better.
Mhm.
The body knows it's being attacked. So let's just take a real common one like wheat, bread. You're at the dining table and bread and butter. What could be better, right? Unless you're reactive to it. And so what the brain does, it's goes, oh, some poison, something bad, negative. So the endorphins come out, the gliadorphin if it's bread, caseyendorphin if it's milk. And so there's all these different endorphins can be produced. What do? They kind of drug you. They kind of make you feel actually a little bit better.
Mm.
So you can get addicted to the food that's wrong for you. And that's just an amazing concept for most people. The reason you like bread and butter so much is because it's bad for you.
Right.
That sounds strange, but that's how it works.
Well, and that has to tie into the gut brain connection too, right? We have so much signal going between the gut and the brain. And I once heard that the bacteria in your gut is created to like the foods that you eat. So it kind of has a preference over certain things. So it could very well be sending these signals to the brain and saying, "Hey, you should eat more of that. That's really, really good for you." And in actuality, kind of causing that imbalance. Like, how do you view the gut brain connection in what you do?
Well, the first thing to recognize, and that's a great point, is that it's like having two brains. And you would hope they talk to each other, but they actually are somewhat independent. The brain that's in the gut, again, you have these trillions of cells, as you mentioned, and nerves and things like that. And independently, like we just mentioned, get addicted to foods, but it can break down your immune system. Then you can get a dysbiosis. Then you can get parasites and bacteria and funguses and all kinds of things live in there. And you get this whole sort of mind of its own, if you will. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of communication, mostly through the nervous system, as you mentioned, and it's pretty complex stuff. But the bottom line is that figuring out what's wrong. That's why we call it metabolic chaos. It's chaotic, and so to sort it out, we use our labs. We run the same labs, but we get different data on each person. So everybody's a study of one, and then we can recommend the right diet for you, the right rest, and what people would say sleep, but that's not the only way to rest. But diet, rest, exercise, obviously, stress reduction, which is so complex and huge, and then supplementation. And I think it's important to supplement because food just isn't real high quality anymore. Even organic food doesn't have that much nutrition in it compared to when my grandfathers were growing it in their backyards.
Right.
So yeah, because I'm old and they were really old. If they were alive today, they'd be famous because they'd be like 110 or something. But anyway, so the idea is that the brain talks to the gut talks to the brain, and hardly anyone understands what they're saying to each other. That's really the key. And so you need a system. You need some kind of pathway. Sometimes that pathway is a little narrower than you might like for a
Mhm.
while, right? We talk about the narrow path in a lot of ways, but when it comes to food and lifestyle, it's pretty important to to be on top of it. And the lab work gives you the motivation. See, that's where we make the invisible visible. You can talk about bugs, and parasites, bacteria, but they're invisible. I don't know. How do I know? Well, you run a lab test. Now it's visible. So when you make the invisible visible, people follow along better. So we've always had the labs and the sort of threat of retesting. Sometimes that hangs over your head a bit. I don't want that retest. I wanted this to be gone by the time I retest. Of course you do. And you'll see that all kinds of markers, really good biomarkers, predictive markers for not only the short-term problem and complaints you're facing, but the long-term ones also improve. Your markers for dementia and cardiovascular disease and diabetes and all these killers, those predictive markers also improve as your lifestyle improves.
Right. Yeah. I remember a client telling me once that they had asked their doctor about getting tested for parasites. And the doctor was like, oh, we don't do that. And so the client was absolutely like convinced she had parasites. But the doctor was like, well, that's not a test that we run. So the answer becomes, you need to go into these sorts of tests, right? These things that you do to be able to track down these issues. And when you find things like that, do you find that it's supplements, dietary changes that can help deal with kind of these bugs, or do you have to go a more conventional route?
Well, there's both. The truth is that when we're the ones that often find the bugs, so to speak, but depending on what it is, you might just want to refer that client to their physician. So, and they could tell the doctor, hey, I ran this test and this is what I found. And I just want to see how you would treat this. And if they do, fine. As long as it gets handled, that's what we care about. Chase those bugs away. We're gonna help you rebuild and repair and restore function. But sometimes those medications are okay.
Yeah.
You got to get rid of that stuff. But if they refuse, I don't want to go there, and I don't. And oh, by the way, sometimes, as you mentioned, physicians have poo-pooed our test results because they don't run that lab. It's not covered by insurance, so they don't know it. They don't run it. And so either way, we would say you have options. And there's lots of tried and true centuries or even millennia old remedies for some of these things. People have been chasing parasites away for thousands of years.
That's very true. Yeah. Okay. Well, excellent. There's a lot of information to digest. So thank you so much for joining us today, Reed.
We're just getting started.
Oh, yeah, we are. And so to our audience, what I'm going to do is I'm going to suggest that they connect with you. And I've included all of your information in the show notes. But do you want to give kind of a shout out as to where they can reach you?
Yeah, sure. Let me just look, because we've made up I think it's just go to fdntraining.com pain-free fdntraining.com/pain-free. And we might have a free gift there for you or something, and be happy to have a chat.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I'm sure people will be reaching out. I know this is something a lot of my listeners have been after for a long time. So thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Rob. Keep up the great work you're doing.
I will. Thank you. Until next time, I'm Dr. Rob Vanbergen, and you're listening to Pain Free for Life.
Thanks for listening to Pain Free for Life. Be sure to follow us, share the show with family and friends, and leave us a review on iTunes. Every time you share the show, you are helping someone take their life back from pain. Visit painfreeforlife.com for more resources, including our free guides to microcurrent, the Hache protocol and inflammation, as well as our blog and online community full of people just like you, successfully overcoming all kinds of chronic and extreme conditions to live happy, productive, pain-free lives forever. And stay tuned for the next episode of Pain Free for Life.